The Spartan Nationals are coming to Jacksonville, Florida, April 8th through the 10th. Wrestle freestyle, folk style, Greco, and beach at the Spartan Nationals. Register now at SpartanCombat.com. That's SpartanCombat.com.
So I had the check. I had the lubrication to get the equipment to Slovakia. Now all I had to do was put my big boy pants on and actually jump on a flight and go to the Ukrainian border.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if they gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Monday, March 28th, coming to you from the windy Chicago IL. The city's playing tricks on us, folks. It was 60 last week. It's 20 today. But alas, here we go. Episode with Joe Sena coming your way. He's joined by Mike Palazzo, the head coach at Lake Highland Prep. And this podcast is a twofold podcast. We talk about Joe's trip to the Slovakian-Ukrainian border, where he was taking a bunch of supplies out there. Crazy story. Can't wait for you to hear it. And then we shift and talk about the NCAA tournament and some of the Spartan combat athletes who competed there. Fan of the week goes to our friend John White, a high school ref out of West Chicago, a good friend and a supporter of this show. John, it was great to see you last weekend. Really, really appreciate all the support of the podcast. And before we get to this episode, real quick, this interview was recorded last Monday, so when we're talking about the NCAA double tournament, it's as if it just happened. All right, that's it. Let's get to the interview with Joe Sena and Mike Palazzo. Joe Sena, Mike Palazzo, welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
How we doing?
Doing great.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome. We got two gentlemen from Florida calling in today. I just got back from the Nationals, and Joe, I know we had talked about syncing up there, but turns out you've been in Ukraine for a couple days, and I just thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to come on and tell everyone what the heck you've been doing out there.
Yeah, so no one knows this story, but about 2 weeks ago, 2+ weeks ago, when the war broke out, we have an advisor at Spartan who used to be the CEO of Reebok and the CMO of Adidas. He actually came up with the tagline, "Impossible is nothing." So Mike, you don't even know this. He texts me and he says, "Why aren't you at the Ukrainian border?" And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not going to the Ukrainian border." And he goes, "Well, I mean, your whole brand and like you should be helping out." And it kind of made sense. It went in one ear and out the other. I was busy with whatever, but that just seemed ridiculous. Too dangerous. I have a family, whatever. A couple days later, I get a picture from my team. We have a team in Eastern Europe. We have a very large business in Eastern Europe. It's one of our strongest markets in the world. Romania, Hungary, Czech, Slovakia, and even the Ukraine. But it's not a market that a lot of people pay attention to, even though it's so strong and we go so deep there. And my friend texts me an image of a Spartan truck going into the Ukraine. And so I say to my social people, "Hey, post this. I didn't realize we were doing this. Apparently our team is bringing humanitarian aid to the Ukraine." So my social guy posts it. And then like 7 or 8 hours later, my friend, my partner over there hits me up and says, "Hey, we got a lot of street cred from posting it, but you didn't do anything, Joe. Like, we're doing all the work over here. Like, we're loading trucks. And so I said, you're right. I said, what could we do? He said, well, the one thing the Ukrainians are begging for, not just the Ukrainians, but we have an office that's still operating right now in Kyiv. Okay. They're begging for night vision goggles and bulletproof vests. So I've always been known my whole life as a guy who like figures it out and gets it done. And I was like, how the hell am I going to get night vision goggles and bulletproof vests, right? So we have a lot of military contacts. I hit up my military guys, and it's nearly impossible because it's hard to move military gear to another country. Like, and thankfully it's that way. Like you wouldn't, as an American, you don't want us to develop things or have cool stuff that just randomly gets shipped around the world. But it turns out, unbeknownst to me, that some of our team members in Slovakia work for the Defense Department of Slovakia. So that night, they get on the phone with my military friends in the U.S., and we have brokered a deal, this is like a week ago, to move bulletproof vests, protective vests from the U.S. to Slovakia. If we're going to do that, I'm thinking I probably should go over there, and then it comes up, oh, by the way, you got to buy these things, and they're pretty damn expensive. So I'm on the phone with a friend of mine. I know this is dragging out the story. I apologize, but I'm on a phone with a friend of mine who owns Saks Fifth Avenue and Hudson Bay Company. He's done really, really well. We're good friends. And he says, whatever you need, just tell me what the check is. I'll write it. So I had the check. I had the lubrication to get the equipment to Slovakia. Now all I had to do was put my big boy pants on and actually jump on a flight and go to the Ukrainian border. And what I like to do in life, I don't know if you do this, Mike, or you do this, Ryan, but what I do is I start telling everybody I'm doing something whenever I'm on the fence about doing it, and I do it publicly because then I'm committed. I don't want to, right? I don't want to be a fraud. So yeah, I'm going to Ukraine. I'm telling everybody right now, like, no, what am I going to do? I hadn't even told my wife yet. So, but my wife comes from a family of FBI. So she was incredibly like, no big deal. Maybe she was hoping I never made it home. I don't know. But I got the flight. But here's a great part of the story. As this is all going down, sitting behind me in this new office I'm in Orlando is a guy that I hear taking phone calls. Well, if I help him out, he might be dead tonight. And I'm like, what are you working on? And he goes, I'm working on this app, a crowdsourcing app that's never been done before, where people could help find loved ones in situations like Ukraine, or if there's a hurricane, or wherever there's mass movement of people and happens quickly. You could snap pictures or whatever, and then we could crowdsource. So I was like, look, I'm going over there like tomorrow if you want to come. And he's like, I'm in. So he jumps on a plane with me, and we go over and we land. And who picks us up? We land in Vienna, Austria. And who picks us up is the lawyer I told you about that works for the Secretary of Defense in Slovakia. Drives us 8 hours up close to the border. And he says, listen, I'd love to stay. He drops us off, but I have a meeting tomorrow with the U.S. Secretary of Defense in Slovakia, so I gotta drive back to Bratislava. So anyway, that's how the whole thing came about. And the best part, obviously, was that we delivered vests. Another great part was that I got to meet a lot of these refugee families, mostly women and children. 80-90% of all the people I saw coming across the border were women and children. They typically had 1 or 2 plastic bags full of everything they could grab as quickly as they could. I would say 80% of the people coming across the border, the women and children, have a place to go. Somehow they have a connection somewhere in Eastern Europe. Remember, this used to be one connected place years ago. But 20% of them, which is a big number, in Slovakia alone, that's 700 to 1,000 women a night with kids, have nowhere to go. And so they get to a really cool refugee camp, which is very clean. It's awesome, but they don't know where to go. And so a bunch of people, including our Spartan team, will bring them somewhere to a family that's willing to house them, to a hotel that's willing to give them a room or whatever. But it's a volume of people. I think there are well over 3 million people now that have come across the border. And then, I'm sorry I'm rambling with all this stuff, but it was a pretty wild trip. And then a friend of mine, very, very high level special forces, runs a few groups that you guys know about, saw that I was in Slovakia. So he's like, I'll be there in 2 hours. So him and a couple of special forces guys, which made me feel really good. And it was good for them because they said they need to research what they call NGOs, non-governmental organizations. They need to go to the border in different countries, see what's going on, because they're trying to continue to supply whatever the Ukrainians need, and keep the fight going from the Ukrainian side, and it's just helpful for them. And so I got to spend 2 days with those guys, and it made me feel pretty safe and just badass hanging out with those guys, you know. And then
That's some validation.
Yeah, in those 2 days where I got to hang out with my buddies, there were two things that came up that, Mike, you'll love for the wrestling program, and Ryan, you'll love for your audience. One, my buddy said, I said, how's your family doing? He said, great. He's got like a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And he said, but I noticed that the 3-year-old was giving, as my wife was FaceTiming with me each night so I could stay in touch with my family, my 3-year-old was giving my 1-year-old little toy cars to play with. And we thought, wow, we must have did a great job parenting, because most kids don't share their toys, right? And he said upon closer inspection, what he found was that his older son was taking the cars that had no eyes on them, the non-valuable cars, and giving those to the younger child. And so they wanted to do a test. They took those cars which were less valuable and put them at the bottom of the pile on top of all the good cars, and did it again. And sure enough, the kid dug through everything and only gave the less valuable cars to the brother to play with. And so this guy, this friend of mine that runs this unit, he said, you know, we all have to give cars with eyes. We have to give to the point where it hurts. It obviously would hurt my son to give him one of the good cars. And so when we think about giving, like, we all think we give, but did it really hurt? Because if it didn't hurt, you didn't really give much. And I thought that was an awesome lesson for me to learn going over there, because yeah, I jumped on a plane, I went over, my friend raised some money, you know, we raised some money, we bought the stuff, but it didn't really hurt. It wasn't that big a deal, you know? So I think it was a great life lesson for me. And then the other one he taught me was he spent a lot of time while he's over there for the last, 3-4 weeks with all the NATO countries and even countries that, want to be part of NATO, that are all working together to try to end this war. And maybe there's some rift between a couple of countries. Maybe there's somebody they don't like. And what they found was you got to close, he called it close the distance. When you don't like somebody, you're pissed off, maybe there's some friction. He said, you get on the phone with them is okay. But if you get up close and personal and have a conversation and you close the distance, you pretty much can get past anything with another human being. And so I got to give more cars with eyes, and I got to close the distance. Those are my two big lessons coming out of the Ukrainian border.
Mike, had you heard about any of this trip yet?
I did. I heard that he was going, and I was like, man, this guy's really nuts. But it sounded like it was really safe, and it was for a good cause. Hats off to him. I mean, it's I got to tell you, around Joe's in Orlando now, so he's telling people, like you said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it's funny how other parents and other people are going, yeah, that guy's really is nuts.
Yeah,
it just validated how crazy Joe is, right? Like, why would he do that? But look, he had a good plan. Look, he's safe. All is good. A lot of people got help, right? So, well worth it.
So, Joe, what was the temperament of the women and children coming across the border, and why was it the men were staying because they're staying to fight?
The men are all staying to fight. I had an opportunity to call in between calling Mike and getting updates at the NCAAs. He had the most valuable updates, Mike. I was talking to our office that still exists in the Ukraine, in Kyiv, and he said, the Russians were getting pretty tricky at this point. I said, what do you mean? He said they're putting grenades under wounded or dead bodies so that when we go to like help a wounded or remove a dead body, the grenade goes off. He said, and I don't know if it's in the news or not to sound too graphic, but he said now there's a lot of raping going on. There's a lot of stuff all meant to break the spirit of the Ukraine. And it makes sense. I mean, they're in war, right? And this is what happens at war. But the craziest thing was, he said, even though all that's going on and there's a missile flying over our building, you find yourself just kind of going on with the day like a normal day, like, hey, don't burn the potatoes while they're making breakfast, or let's go outside. Like he said, it is a little bizarre how you go through your day. And because of all that, the women and children, like they're moving them across the border, and they're pretty stoic people. I can't say that I ran into a bunch of women that were crying or anything, but then when I had somebody translate and I started to ask questions, you would get a breakdown when they started to explain that they didn't believe it at first, then the building next to them blew up, and then they had to leave everybody, and then they would tear up. But otherwise they were pretty stoic.
Yeah, and these are hard
I
people.
wonder, Joe. Yeah, I wonder, Joe, do you think that reverse it around and have these people be Americans? How do you see a difference? How would we deal with it?
Well, that's the problem, right? Like my whole life, I've been enamored with Eastern Europeans because they're just so tough. And I'm a believer that our entire species, doesn't matter what country, where we're from, that we're all tough deep down inside, but then we learn helplessness. And so when you ask about Americans in general, me included, by the way, when we have climate controlled houses, everything's perfect. You build these layers of helplessness that have to be peeled away. And at least the Eastern Europeans I know, they don't have that many layers of helplessness. Like they're pretty rugged. So I don't know how we would have been able to deal with it. Maybe some northern Alaskans would have did pretty well.
Yeah, that's just a different way of living over there. It's just hard to imagine, what's going on. And so while you're over there, Joe, you're getting updates on the wrestling tournament, though, at the same time. You're kind of juggling both things.
Well, here's the crazy thing. I mean, we have a Spartan team of athletes, and they're all unbelievable athletes. And when Vito lost, I was confused. I didn't know if maybe there was confusion in the text I was getting. And I got in touch with Mike, and Mike said, I don't know, he got a bad call. And I thought, that's bizarre, because Mike is watching this on his television. Everybody else I know is at the tournament. No one else complained about a bad, said to me, Vito got a bad call. But then when I spoke to Yanni's dad, to Aaliyah the next day said, I think Vito had a bad call. And so Mike, maybe you want to comment on it. You saw something that I assume Vito saw.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. They went over and they reviewed some action that happened after this, but just prior, there was no doubt in my mind that Vito had a reversal and was in control of back points, and yet they looked at it and saw, him getting scored on and having back points, and I just couldn't see any world where that was actual reality. If you look at it, go back, watch it 10 times in a row, I don't know how that wasn't as obvious as could be. I'm sure they're kind of pretzeled up. The reality is that was Vito's move, hands down. He purposely put him there, and he was controlling and holding him on his back. It was really hard for me to watch, and I don't think too many people actually might have seen it, because you have to see right when the action takes place. But right when it took place, it was Vito's choice to go that direction, to put him in that position, and it looked like a clear reversal to me. And it's a shame. Obviously, both guys are superstars and worthy, but at that moment, I would say that he definitely was the victim of a really bad call.
Mike, to your point, I was there and watching it, really couldn't tell what was going on, but it was a very odd sequence. But I rewatched it today in preparation for this conversation. It's clear as day. Vito had the reversal, and then I think 2 near fall of his own, and then this kind of roll through happens, and it's like it's a very odd roll through. I've never seen it before, and but somehow they don't call it the reversal. They don't call the near fall for Vito, but they go 4 the other way, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
It was bad. It was bad. I mean, it's funny because I was at home, and my in-laws are there, and I'm like losing it. Like they have no idea anything about wrestling, right? They're like, what is this guy like talking about? But I was so sure of what I had seen. And luckily, if I look back at it and I've watched it probably 6 times since, I'm like, it's absolutely, it was right. I mean, there's no way it's not a reversal. And I know Vito feels the same way. I know that he made a conscious decision to hit it and to, go that direction. And it was definitely not a position that they just ended up in, but it was his choice to put them in that position. So it was a tough one to watch. But these guys can't get them all right.
Yeah, no, there was a couple questionable calls, but that one sticks out. Just incredible wrestling. The upsets, the talent level was insane. Joe, what have you seen just from working with some of these superstars like David Carr, Yanni and Vito, Shane Griffith? I know you had a lot of experience in the ultra running world and some of those athletes, but what's jumped out to you just from working with these studs for a year or so?
Just great human beings. That's it's more important than winning or losing. It's important they know, win or lose, that we're 100% behind them. They're just good human beings. Like even I'm sure you guys saw Yanni's interview, right, where he won, but he was upset at himself, and just love that about his personality. I mean, the whole Carr family, they're salt of the earth. Right. Vito, Palazzo and I spent 3-4 days with him just before the NCAAs. They're just great people.
Yeah. Yeah. They're really nice people. They are. And I think to get to that level, you have to have a good moral base about you. Coach Palazzo, I know you had a couple guys going there. Was it Ben Golden and Elijah, 2 guys from you who wrestled?
Yeah. Clary and Ben wrestled, and we kind of got this other guy, Mike D'Agostino, that we like to claim. While he wasn't a Lake Highland Prep guy, he spent a whole lot of time with us, and we love him. He's part of our family. He's a special kid. There's no doubt about it. As far as he's come and where he's come from, he's done well. And Elijah's done now. No more eligibility, but Ben's got a couple seasons left. He's doing well. I would expect to see quite a few more guys pop up next year. There's a lot of guys out there, so we'll see what happens.
D'Agostino's one of your guys. I didn't know that. That's he's amazing. He looks like a bear out there.
He just never stops wrestling, man. He's the epitome of a kid who I think Michael took the best that he ever did in a high school state tournament, maybe a third one time in Florida States. He had some knee injury and another knee injury, but the guy just never missed anything. He would drive an hour and a half to get to practice every single day, and never missed a beat. And he wasn't that guy then, but everybody would always say the same thing. Wait and see what happens then, man. That kid is going to get some, and he sure as heck did. There's no doubt about it. And he's proven that hard work definitely, prevails. And he's a great kid. Just like Joe just said, he's one of those guys who's just, he's the poster child of wrestling. He's just a damn good kid, and good things happen for people. I honestly believe that. So we're proud of that guy. No doubt. I can tell you, watching the tournament, the one thing that I've been trying to get, I think I mentioned this to you, Joe, but if there was a way, so let's take a match like finals match, Sirachi's match, okay? So if you tried to calculate what the actual calorie burn was in that finals match with the amount of action that took place with those 2 unbelievable athletes, big-bodied boys, and it was constant action from start to finish. I don't know if anything in sports actually even holds a stick. The amount of energy exerted during that period of time, right? Which is 7-8 minutes, right? So an 8-minute go, and I don't know how other people look at it, but we're always trying to find ways to get people to understand our sport, right? To understand how grueling or how hard it really is, right? A runner could probably run 8 minutes as hard as they can, but no way come near. And I'm guessing, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. Nowhere near the amount of actually energy expended, right? Which would be calories burned basically during the same period of time from a motion like running, as opposed to a full out 8-minute, wrestling match at that level with two human beings pushing on each other that hard. And that's one thing that I noticed so much with the Penn State guys. They're relentless with their action, and they're constantly pressing to score points. And they make wrestling exciting too. And by the way, they win a lot, so it's neat. Guys like Yanni are doing it. They're you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yanni's upset because he didn't score enough points, and it's neat to see, because it's no wonder why he's the guy he is. Where they're constantly looking to improve, do more, and that makes wrestling exciting. It's not necessarily exciting to watch wrestling when there's no points being scored. So this tournament itself was awesome in that regard. There was a lot of action.
Yeah, it's there's a group of wrestlers that you do see a lot of those 0-0 first periods and hanging on to a win, a 1-point win, a 2-point win. But guys that you mentioned, Dean Hamidi from Wisconsin, another guy's just going for broke out there. I love watching him. So all around,
awesome.
He's amazing, right?
Yeah, maybe an Austin Gomez. I didn't get to watch too many of his matches, to tell you the truth. I watched one of them, but he's the kind of an action guy that puts himself into a lot of situations and stuff. And of course, I'm biased because he's went to my high school. But there's some guys out there, and you can see the cream of the crop are guys who attack and they score points.
Yep, absolutely. And Joe, I know you're going to be sending your kids to Lake Highland Prep. Coach Palazzo, are you out in the prep league now? Or are you still competing in the Florida States?
We're out. This was the very first year that we did. So COVID threw us a real curveball, because we didn't really, for 2 seasons, we didn't do anything. We did, but we didn't compete in this high school state tournament 2 years in a row. But we sat idle. We weren't necessarily at national preps either. But last year's national preps wasn't exactly national preps, the tournament that we just didn't go to. This year was. It was the first year we were in it. It's exciting. I think we're expecting to do things. I didn't get into it not to do well, so we'll keep pushing and see how high we can climb up there. And I guess the one thing, if people ask me, like, Coach, how different is it? It is different. You sign up. If you win that tournament, you're probably the best team in the country, right? So you could put yourself in a situation where you could never win anything ever again. And quite frankly, that's probably good for my kids. It keep everybody on it. And if you're going to win every year, then you got a lot of work to do. It's good. It's exciting. We're expecting to do good.
Yeah, you see your guys like Elijah Rivera and Danny Nini stepping up, and you going up against the Malverns, the Wyoming Sems, the Blair. So awesome, you guys are in there. And I know school out in Arizona run by Eric Larkin, I believe, they're trying to do the same right now.
Yeah, he's fighting to get in there. I don't know if he's going to get in or not, but it would be great. I mean, I would say that the more the better. You want it to be. It's got to be the toughest postseason tournament out there. You just took those 3, 4, 5 schools, and then you took the individuals. It's pretty deep. It's pretty deep. I think Eli Rivera was like 6th seed. And he's a top 15, top 10 kid in the country, and he's a 6th seed at that tournament. That's a pretty tough postseason tournament, in a lot of weight classes. So, we're excited to be there, no doubt. We got work to do, and we're going to do it.
Yeah, and Joe, I know that as we kind of wind this down, Spartan Combat's been busy this year. Just signed Kylie Welker, University of Iowa's first, big time signing, and she's a superstar in the women's ranks. But the most near thing coming up is the Spartan Nationals coming up in April 8th through the 10th in Florida. Excited for that. How are things coming along as we get near to that tournament?
It's going great. We're gonna get a chance to see Palazzo versus Larkin. They're coming down. Valiant's coming.
They are coming. Great.
Yeah. Obviously Kong, and there'll be some of the big teams there, so it'll be fun. And my kids are already under Palazzo. When we walked into Palazzo's room on January 3rd, and I got on the the Airdyne bike, the assault bike, and I looked around and I saw all these like first place flags he has hanging in this giant wrestling room. I thought, we are out of our league here. But then as I biked on the thing, I was thinking, this is exactly what I asked people to do in life. And so my boys are going to have to figure it out. And they did tell me within the first week, they said, Dad, his workouts are a lot harder than yours. So I said, good. All right, we're in the right place then.
Damn.
Yeah. Besides like going on a 400-mile run, which takes too long to do.
You know what they were talking about yesterday? They were saying it was like 4 of the kids were together. They took me to eat, believe it or not, Mike. They took me to eat at Floyd's Pigs or some barbecue place. Pig
Floyd's, right?
Yeah, Pig Floyd's. And we're sitting down. And I was just listening to the 4 of them talk, and they said, "Oh my God, when he makes us do that one workout where like we think it's over, and then there's 2 more, and then you're definitely making them tougher."
It's just how wrestling is. I think that most guys train people like that. Our sport, there's never really fixed amount of time. You don't know. You got to be able to deal with curveballs, and I think their brains get wired like that. And I'm confident that most of the higher level groups out there are constantly throwing curveballs at their guys, and it's a tough one for wrestlers to have to swallow. Most other things get really controlled necessarily. There's a start, there's a finish. I guess you could say a wrestling match does. There's all these other factors involved that are curveballs, including not perfect circumstances, which is probably the biggest one. I just wrestled the match. This round I won, but I jammed my finger and my neck is killing me and my knee is tweaked and my stomach hurts all at the same time. You got to be able to recreate a lot of those situations so those guys are able to perform down the line. Curveballs and workouts help fix that.
I was just thinking, and that reminds me of a story. Adam Terapelli was telling me he was in the national finals and wrestling Tony Davis. And, rarely is Terapelli in a cradle on his back, but at some point in the match, Tony Davis sneaks a cradle on him. And he said he exerted so much energy getting out of that cradle in that 15 seconds that the rest of the match was pretty much spent for him. And so you never know when you're going to be like Vito on your back or like Terapelli in a cradle in the national finals and your gas tank zeroed out, just like that.
Yeah, who got locked up in a cradle in the finals this weekend? It was Teamer came out and put a cradle on Deacon, did he not?
I'd have to go back and watch.
It's unusual, but he fought back. He fought back. That's I think he only ended up scoring 2, but he had it locked up, and there was a point there where, wow, this could be it. So you just never know what's going to happen in our sport for sure.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, as we sign off, Joe, any last words? Coach Palazzo, any last words?
I would say I want to leave you with, make sure we give away cars with eyes and we close the gap.
Cars with eyes. So what you're saying, Joe, is we want to give away things that people want.
People want and that hurt us to give them away. In other words, if it didn't cost us or hurt us, then we didn't really give.
Yeah, I like it. All
right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Wisdom. All right, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you, Ryan.
Thank you so much for listening to Wrestling Changed My Life. This episode was brought to you by Spartan Combat. You can register now for the Spartan Nationals taking place April 8th through the 10th at SpartanCombat.com. To keep up with Wrestling Changed My Life on social media, follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Changed My Life. You can also go to WrestlingChangeMyLife.com for all past episodes. That's it, and we'll see you next time. Time.